Vince McMahon pushed through this much criticized WrestleMania match, and Kenny Omega reveals his true thoughts on CM Punk following the all-out backstage brawl. But first, former AEW Tag Team Champion Dax Harwood would speak on his FTR podcast this week, where he would discuss AEW's decision to not mention him and his tag team partner Cash Wheeler in a recent tweet. After winning the Wrestling Observer Feud of the Year for their rivalry with the Briscoes last year, AEW would fail to mention FTR, only congratulating the other side of the feud. When asked about this on his show this week, Dax would admit that he felt slighted and said, "Yeah, I did feel slighted, I can't lie. I mean, yeah, it was just because we worked so hard last year. We did with what I feel was not the best content, not the best effort to maximize our momentum from last year. I feel we did our best to make everything work, and for them to not acknowledge us really did hurt me a bit." When asked if he and Cash would be involved in tonight's Tag Team Casino Battle Royal match on Dynamite for a shot at the AEW tag belts at Revolution, Dax would say, "I can't tell you the truth. I wouldn't want to do that to AEW, and I wouldn't want to do that to us. Whatever the truth is, whether we'll be there in the Battle Royal or not, I wouldn't want to ruin that for anybody, the fans included. So I will say just watch Wednesday and we'll see." Dax and Cash are currently absent from AEW television, with them said to be considering their options ahead of the end of their deals with the company in April, with Dax stating on his podcast that FTR are willing to return if AEW want them, at least until their deals expire. Dax would say, "We took a couple of months off to let our bodies heal, to think about what we wanted to do. So we've made it known that we will gladly come back at the very least until our contracts are up, or until we can come to some middle ground or not and leave, but I haven't necessarily heard anything back. I had a feeling they were not very happy with us." According to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, WWE superstar Sonya Deville was arrested recently after being caught with a firearm in the state of New Jersey. Whilst Deville holds a license for the gun in the state of Florida, this is not the case in Jersey, with the report noting, Fightful has learned Sonya Deville was arrested in New Jersey recently for having a firearm in her vehicle. She has a permit in Florida, but it wasn't valid in NJ. She's in the process of getting it thrown out, and we're told she started carrying after the home invasion. Sources stated that Sonya was celebrating with her fiancé, and the gun was in their vehicle as it was being valeted. WWE sources indicated there was no heat on Sonya Deville, as they understand why she would want to protect herself following the stalker/home invasion situation. We're told that following the situation, Sonya actually got help from a judge in expediting her permit in Florida to protect herself. Deville would be the victim of a home invasion in August 2020 after an obsessed fan broke into her property, leading to her and then fellow WWE superstar Mandy Rose fleeing from the house in order to get to safety. Highly rated luchador Dragon Lee would sign for WWE in December 2022, with him revealing that he was heading to the NXT brand. With that said, he is yet to appear in WWE's developmental territory since the announcement. However, it appears that this could be set to change. Grayson Waller would continue his ongoing rivalry with NXT official Shawn Michaels last night, taking to Twitter to post a video where he questioned if the Heartbreak Kid will show up to their meeting at next week's NXT Roadblock special, going on to call him a corporate stooge. It was then Dragon Lee that replied to the post, telling Waller that he talks too much, a hint that he has his eye on the situation. Lee has reportedly been dealing with some visa issues that have slowed down his debut, with those problems perhaps solved ahead of next week's show. And speaking of Roadblock, more matches were added to the card during last night's episode of NXT. Firstly, Dijak is set to battle rival Tony D'Angelo in a match billed as a jailhouse street fight, which will see the two men fight under no DQ rules, with the winner being crowned when they lock their opponent inside a jail cell. Gigi Dolan will get her hands on former Toxic Attraction tag team partner Jacy Jayne after her betrayal, with the two now set to go one-on-one next week, with Gigi issuing a challenge last night. It's also been confirmed that NXT champion Bron Breakker and the Creed brothers are set to take on Indus Sher and Jinder Mahal, with Andre Chase set to take on Joe Gacy of Schism, with a face-off between Pretty Deadly and Gallus also scheduled. These matches and segments are in addition to the NXT Women's title match between champion Roxanne Perez and challenger Meiko Satomura, which was already confirmed. It was recently announced that the content from the Reels streaming service will soon be available on Peacock. However, it appears that this will not include content from a certain wrestling company. It was announced in January 2023 that Major League Wrestling had signed a deal with Reels to air their Underground show on Tuesdays. However, due to Peacock's deal with WWE, the MLW show won't be moving over with the rest of the content. This news follows a judge recently dismissing MLW's lawsuit against WWE after they claimed that WWE made attempts to undermine their competition by preventing MLW from finalizing media distribution deals. Many are now wondering if this newest development will help them get their case back on track. AEW star Keith Lee would speak on the Masked Men podcast this week, where he listed one of his goals within the company. Lee would state that he has his eye on the AEW World Championship and wants to become the first black world champion in promotion history, and said, "Oh, I mean, let's be honest here, any place or any time that an individual goes to a company, it doesn't have to be sports related or physical. When you go somewhere, most people have goals or ambitions of being that number one talent, that number one person, that number one mind, whatever it may be. The end goal is obviously to become AEW World Heavyweight Champion, and let's be honest, I'm really good at making history. I would be AEW's first black World Heavyweight Champion. I'm more than capable of doing that. I'm more than capable of carrying myself in a way that would be fitting and beneficial to a company." And before we get to the rest of today's stories, be sure to subscribe to Wrestle Planet if you haven't done so already, as we aim to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And also head over to Wrestle Planet Gaming if you're into wrestling video games, ahead of the launch of both AEW Fight Forever and WWE 2K23. But with that said, let's get to the rest of the video. Over recent months, talk of a WWE sale has been hot on the press, with many media companies and entities being tipped to make the purchase. One of those companies is Endeavor, who are the parent company of the UFC, although it appears that they are now officially out of the race. Speaking on their Q4 2022 earnings call this week, Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel revealed the organization won't be pursuing the purchase, with them noting, "As it relates to WWE, it's an unbelievable product. Vince, created a great business. We've had a long-standing relationship with them over 2 decades. We're doing on-location business with them, streaming business with them. His business is really valuable, but we're not going to do anything as it relates to changing our leverage position right now." This past Monday on Raw, the WrestleMania challenge issued by Omos was accepted by former Universal Champion Brock Lesnar, with the two monsters set to meet on the grandest stage of them all. According to a new report from WrestleVotes, the match was pushed through by WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, despite reports that he's not involved in the creative process, and WrestleVotes would tweet a GIF of Vince with the caption, "Until the highly anticipated, very compelling Brock Lesnar vs. Omos WrestleMania matchup was the idea of one specific, powerful person who pushed it through." The news follows a report from Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp that one WWE talent believed that Vince McMahon had returned to his role at the head of WWE Creative, much to the concern of the locker room. However, this was later ruled out by WWE officials that spoke to Sapp. With that said, it was noted that Vince does have some input, although the final decision is ultimately that of Triple H's. It seems that this input may have been enough to sway Triple H into booking the match between Omos and Lesnar. Now let's get to another story coming out of the Kenny Omega interview with Renee Paquette on the Sessions podcast, where the AEW EVP would be asked about the backstage altercation involving the Elite CM Punk and Ace Steel after the All Out 2022 pay-per-view in September, which led to suspensions across the board and, in Steel's case, a firing. Omega would compare the fight to that of a disagreement in high school sports, although he knows due to the size of the company it's a little different, and Kenny would say, "There are things, especially now when you're in a multi-million billion-dollar industry, where there are sponsorships on the line, TV deal is on the line. It's not like high school football. It's not, a little tiff that you might have with someone on your fellow amateur wrestling team or whatever, or maybe someone held a submission too long in jiu-jitsu training. It's not that. These things shouldn't even be happening. It's a shame that the general public and a lot of people aren't ever going to know what went down and how it could have been prevented or how it could have, ended differently. That's just sort of how things go again when it's a big business operation. I don't think anyone is happy that it happened or is proud that it happened or anything like that." Omega would then reveal that the parties involved are sworn to secrecy and certain things cannot be discussed legally before wishing CM Punk and Ace Steel well, and he would add, I think across the board, everyone thinks that was a terrible situation that was unnecessary. It's sort of like, hey, we know this thing happened, we heard this thing happened, it's all over the dirt sheets, why don't we know what happened? And it's like, we're kind of sworn to secrecy, we can't say anything legally. So that was the poopy part where I was like, well, why doesn't anyone tell us what's happening? And then you're forced to form your own opinion or to come up with your own theory as to what exactly happened. What's important was no one was seriously injured emerging from that, and I'm so thankful for that. We've moved on with life, I'm completely fine, it doesn't dictate what I do, what I say. I can't speak to the other parties, hopefully they are doing well, and I mean that. And before you go, make sure you check out 10 more upcoming wrestling free agents that you need to know.